Kubernetes for Humans.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Kubernetes for Humans. And my name is Itiel Schwartz, and today with me in the show we have Badyk. Vijay, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. So we have a lot to discuss today. For people who are just starting to listen, we're going to talk about migration. We're going to talk about acquisition and about doing things that are not that greenfield. But before we jump into all of the messy details, share a bit about your background. Like, where did you start? What did you do? And how were you introduced to Kubernetes?
Oh boy. I started as a kid, I guess, back in the early 80s with, I think the TI-99, TRS-80s, Commodore 64s, 8086s, you name it. I was on a computer as far back as I can possibly remember, sometimes to my detriment. Back then, I wasn't really cool to be into computers, so but I didn't care. I was really happy to anytime I could get a chance to get in front of a computer. So, basically, all throughout school, elementary school into high school, I did whatever I could to get on computers and play with them and just spend as much time as I could. And towards the end of my high school, 4 years at school, I was presented with an opportunity to start working part-time at an ISP in my hometown. I live in Maine. So,
nice.
Yeah, this was back in 1996. So that was back in the days where really nobody ran Linux. The kernel back then was in the 0. I don't remember what I had the Mother's Day release or Infomagic releases of Linux back then, where you would actually get it on CD. And we started with Solaris. So we actually ran a bunch of old Sun pizza boxes, Spark 20s, Spark 10s, modem chassis. We got into channelized T1s, all the ways of, and as a kid starting out with access to all that, I was in seventh heaven. I mean, these are back in the days where you were dealing with, 14 more modems and just lots of slow connectivity, PvP connections, shell accounts, stuff like that. So getting access to an ISP where I could actually work there to download using actual data, real data lines was amazing. So I started there and got my friends jobs there. Whoever was into computers, I was able to get them working and just worked there for about 3 years. And we built the ISP from just a couple hundred customers into the tens of thousands. And it was a great time. I really learned a lot. I was mentored by a bunch of really great people. And that basically pushed forward into me finally moving out with a bunch of friends out to California, out to the Silicon Valley area in the late 90s. And then started
just before the .com or during the .com bubble, right?
Oh yeah. It was during the .com boom. It was in August of 99. I moved out to San Jose and ended up getting a job with Concentric Network. Some people may know of them from, they ran an IRC server called irc.concentric.net, which was pretty popular back then. I was 20 years old at the time and took the job. My girlfriend at the time and I flew out. We had all our stuff shipped out. She had never been, I don't think she'd ever been to California at that point. So we were a little homesick in the beginning, but once our friends had moved out, we quickly kind of got over that. And that was really where the responsibility set in. That's where I went from a small town kid working at a small ISP into a pretty major web hosting platform, where we went from pizza box, recycled, reused Sun hardware to brand new, ultra class boxes and that kind of stuff. So it was quite the experience working out there.
Okay, and then what? How did the bubble burst affected you, if any?
Yeah, so I was employed at Concentric for a little over a year and a half, I think, and towards that, about a year and a half in, I kind of got the itch to look for something else because I felt like a lot of the work revolved around custom code. Everything was written in C back then, so I was really more into open source projects, not as proprietary of a product, and I wanted to kind of branch out a little bit. So I took a job with a smaller company called First IP, And their concept was to basically take whatever you were running in the data center and mirror it into their platform. So it's sort of the predecessor to the cloud. The guy that founded that, I believe his name was Ed Liu, and he had also successfully ran a company called Resonate. And Resonate, if anybody remembers, I think they produced a load balancer that was one of the first software load balancers ever to be developed, at least in that time period. It was really, really popular. So worked at that company for about 2 months, took a day off to deal with sickness. And I got a phone call that everybody in the company was laid off. And it was about 20 people.
Okay.
It was, that was kind of a brutal hit. I had gotten a bit of a pay bump. I was really happy. We had just moved down to Capitola. We had gotten out of the Bay Area and gotten down to Santa Cruz area, which we were thrilled about. And we were then faced with the situation of now what do we do? So, that was right during the worst of it. And we ended up having to move back.
So that's a bummer. And then what happened? Like in the end of the day, you're here with us, right? So somehow things did work out.
Yeah. So, I looked around for a while prior to moving back, talked to the old job, went to find out whether they had anything available. There wasn't. It was a pretty tight crunch for people as far as people wanting to keep their jobs. There wasn't a lot available. So we decided, okay, with the heck of it, we're gonna start over again. And so we headed back home. Ended up getting a gig with the gentleman that had started the ISP that I had already worked at previously before I left.
Good.
Worked for him for a couple of years. He kind of helped me out, which was great. Nice. And at that point, I think I was so young. I said, "The heck with it. I'm done with this tech stuff. I'm going to take a break." So with that, I moved down to Richmond, Virginia, and sight unseen, I needed a change, and wanted to get out of the tech world. I was really big into punk rock and hardcore music and kind of an underground music scene back then. And Richmond was the place for that. So I decided I just wanted to go down and be more part of that and just get out of the tech world completely. So I did do that and had a lot of fun for about a year and a half. And then
you in a band? Do you have any?
No, I had a lot of friends in bands though. I hung out. I was more of a, I guess maybe a scene guy, you might say. But it was a lot of fun, a lot of good people. And to this day, I think Richmond's one of my favorite places. So, I quickly realized that working at a natural food store and a scooter shop, which I both love, Elwood Thompson's, great natural food store if you ever go down to Richmond, and Scoot Richmond, where they sell motorcycles and scooters and whatnot. Great people over there. That's where I worked. And again, quickly determined that really wasn't going to make it for me as far as the bills went. So I ended up taking a job at Bank of America, of all places, at a large data center down there, doing the night shift.
I love your jumps, like, very, very orderly fashion.
I needed to find something where I could kind of maybe leverage the skills that I had before and just kind of get back into it again and slow roll back into IT in the tech world. So I took a job at a monitoring center where it looked kind of like NASA inside. There were screens everywhere. There were basically just jobs you had to monitor. It was pretty low level stuff, really pretty boring, but it got me out of what I was doing and back into the tech world. And that's what kind of led me to out to Chicago. I was able to transfer from Bank of America after about a year out to Chicago. And I transferred out to the Sears Tower. I think we were on the 25th floor. This was also Bank of America. But again, that got a little old, too procedural, way too stuffy. A change on a switch would take, I don't know, a week to make one change on a switch. Couldn't go in the data center after or before 5 p.m. because they were too paranoid about something happening. So, it was, and I get it. It's a bank, so you've got to be very careful. There's a lot of liability. So, after about 6 months, I started looking around, and lo and behold, I found a job with Playboy magazine, at least a job listing. So I went in there and got myself. Fortunately, they responded to me. I got myself a interview, and they had me take a test during the interview, and that was, I think it was installing Apache, getting Apache running on a Linux box, and doing a couple other things. And they might have purposely broken the box just to see if I could fix it. Maybe they broke Resolve Conf or something like that. So I had to go in. It was pretty easy. I remember most of it from years before.
Playboy had like a lot of like, tech, like what was the, what's the business? Like other than magazine, why do they need, or what do you do?
Yeah. The website received quite a bit of traffic, and there were other acquisitions made when I was there. Other websites, they weren't, I don't know the nicest way to put it, probably the most tasteful websites. So that was interesting in its own right. But it was really a pretty challenging situation because we had so much inbound traffic that we had to learn how to deal with load balancing in an optimal way, with like direct server return, using loopback IPs to respond, all kinds of different tricks to route the traffic. And sometimes we would have to even take certain duties the load balancers were performing and offload those back to the web servers themselves. Maybe we'd write a module or something to deal with it. But we had some really talented folks over there that went on to be really, really successful people out to Netflix. One of the guys I worked with was Chris Fregley, who now runs a good portion of Amazon's AI developer advocate group. He just wrote a book on it. So I had a pleasure of working with some good people. And learned a lot there. Just learned how to not necessarily engineer the best solutions, which we did do, but just communication and understanding how to share workloads and things like that.
No, it's like for everyone who didn't really work for like a website company, which has like a lot of direct traffic, that the response time and latency and error rate is super important. Like it is a different ball game than like a B2B SaaS solution or whatever. Like the traffic itself does cost money, right? Like both to purchase and also to utilize. Yeah. So you are hammered with a lot of requests, and I guess like if I need to assume like some really huge spikes or loads based on like certain things. So it is like for anyone who is interested in like a hardcore ops and like infra. So like big e-commerce sites or any like sites that like downtime is crucial, is a great place to, is a great school. Okay, so how much time have you been there? Like, and why?
At Playboy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there for about 3 years.
Okay.
And again, we had acquisitions. We jumped around. We worked on sites out in LA and New York. We were located in Chicago, right off Lakeshore Drive. And that was towards the sort of the demise of what Playboy always was. After such a long run. And so we had to deal with some challenges here and there. And then I believe the brand finally got sold off. But yeah, I was there for about 3 years. And towards the end, just wanted to move on to something different because I just felt like I was kind of doing the same thing over and over again. And certain people had left and so forth. So I ended up moving to another company which is now called Go Health. And they did something completely different. They worked in the insurance world. Yeah. So selling basically insurance connect. Basically, they would have a marketplace and they would connect out to different people, and there were call centers. That company was very small when I started. It was probably 40 people. So we had to grow their development environments. We had to learn how to deal with network engineering work like voice over IP, DSCP markings on packets, and really drill down into wire data analysis, make sure that was working properly, and basically deal with the entire dev and prod environments on. I think they were hosting with Rackspace, so everything was remote. We didn't actually have a data center back then that we'd go into. So that was, I think, the next level where I had a lot more responsibility. There weren't 4 or 5 other people. It was just myself and one other guy, just 2 of us running the whole show. So that really put a lot of weight on my shoulders, trying to keep that operation running.
Okay, so now let's jump maybe to Kubernetes. Like when, why, where, there?
Yeah. So I think Kubernetes presented a solution for what we all used to try to get done with config management. And once I left Go Health, I needed to come back to the East Coast, wanted to go back to New England area. I found a job with, at the time, the name of the company was Tremor. And Tremor, by the way, is an Adtech company. So we basically run an online video advertising platform that helps advertisers run their campaigns and sort of mates them with publishers. And in order to do that, there's a bid process where when a video is about to be watched, there's data that's exchanged and you can bid on that spot, just like you would a billboard, and you can do it all in real time. So it's kind of similar to high-speed trading. So we deal with, requests in the millions of requests per second. So we have a lot of data to deal with, a lot of requests that have to get filled. They have to get filled in a certain amount of time. We don't have a lot of time to wait to respond back. So coming into Tremor, the first thing that we had to attack was monitoring. What are we doing? What's going on? What's happening here? What kind of config management are you running? How are you deploying machines? What are you running in the cloud? What do you want to run in the cloud? What do you want to run on-prem? And why do you want to do those things? So had to basically evaluate the easiest way to run something. And in a lot of ways, we had to make sure the cost was also part of that measurement. So
just to give a context, and if I got it right, when doing ad bidding, it's you're always competing against other companies, right? In you're a broker, right? Someone tells you, I want this and this ad to be in this and this kind of videos, and now you are competing against other brokers basically on the same spot. So you need to understand how worth is it to you to advertise in real time, because everyone is bidding at real time around the spots. Again, very high throughput, very low latency, and again, a lot of money if you are down, right? If you are down in a competition. In Israel, we have a couple of companies somehow in the tech space, not sure if video, but Tabula and Outrain are big companies in that domain, and they have huge data centers and so on. So it is a very, very interesting domain. And you are there. How many people were there? What was your position? And what was the goal? To be more reliable, cost efficiency, all of the above?
Absolutely. All of the above. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. To give some perspective, we were at the point once, we were working with Puppet quite a bit. We found Puppet to be a little cumbersome to deal with. Managing boxes on-prem and also in the cloud was not really all that coherent. So we switched over to Ansible. We thought that was a little bit easier. We were using Ansible Tower to kind of deploy just regular old bare metal nodes. And we found that we were doing a lot of shuffling where we would have one type of box. Okay, this is going to be this type of box running this microservice or what became a microservice. We have another box running this, another box running that. And we think of things in terms of the box, what's running on that one box. And that's where things really started breaking down, where we would need to quickly shift one box into another role. And that became tiring because we'd have to rebuild it. We wouldn't want to just run an app on it without actually rebuilding it because we want it clean. And that is when we finally started investigating Docker, and where we started working with even Docker Swarm back in 2017. I think I attended TalosCon 2017, and it was really awakening to see what other people were doing. We also started using Console, so we started pulling in service discovery, which really helped. That became sort of the keystone to what we do, and allowed us to move and migrate apps off regular bare metal onto what we now use with Kubernetes. How we still do a lot of the same things. So Docker Swarm, and then after that, it moved over to Kubernetes the hard way, I guess. I think that's what Kelsey calls it. And basically hand-built the first Kubernetes cluster. We worked on that, generated our own certs, put everything together, just followed the instructions, and we're finally able to, with the help of KubeRouter, we were able to basically make it so each pod had a routable IP address. We could advertise services running in those pods up to console, and then we could take console services that were kind of running on bare metal and then move those over to Kubernetes very easily, because then we could advertise from bare metal and also the pods at the same time.
So share with me a bit about the migration process. In the end of the day, you guys were already making money, right? Sounds like you're we talked about it a bit earlier, a greenfield, a lot of money. Downtime is in the essence, right? And you shouldn't be down. That being said, you have a lot of infra to migrate, basically, right?
Yeah.
And some of those things were written, not like a pure 12-factor app. Everything is like configured like perfectly. So how much time did it took you guys to migrate from like the bare metal Ansible Puppet configuration into something on top of Kubernetes? And if
Yeah.
you can share maybe like some pitfall from that time, I'm sure that you had at least one.
Oh yeah. It's I think it also revolves around how your app is architected. So in some cases, we couldn't just take. I mean, you can absolutely take a monolithic app, or you can take an app that was running on bare metal and run it in a pod, no problem. You can totally do that. Depends on whether it's stateful, whether it's stateless. Stateful is obviously a lot more difficult because then you have to have storage to go along with it, and you're dealing with PVs, PVCs, storage classes, and so forth. But I think some of it went the route of completely re-architecting the app and maybe breaking it down into separate microservices. Or we went ahead and just said, the heck with it, we're gonna just take this and move it in. We don't care. We'll run it like that for now. There were a lot of exercises in benchmarking there, as you can imagine. A lot of fingers pointed at Kubernetes or whatever we were running, and usually it turned out that it wasn't Kubernetes. It wasn't, because we're not at it's not really a disadvantage in a lot of ways. It's not like a VM with a hypervisor where you take a little bit of a hit. I think you can squeak by with Kubernetes and really get ultimate performance. You can still gain that performance benefit that you would if you were just running on bare metal. So we had to go through a lot of exercises where we would make pretty heavy use of Datadog. And at the time we were running with Datadog. We've since shifted over to the LGTM side of things. We have a pretty substantial deployment that we maintain, running Loki, Grafana, Tempo, Mimir, and even more tools than that. We're looking at Faro and Pyroscope as well. How to integrate that as well as Bela. Actually, we've been playing with Bela as of late. So, but yeah, as far as migrations, basically another thing is mindset. Developers, again, we're thinking more in terms of a box by box basis, and so we had to sort of drive a new way of thinking as far as how to get a reference point for what your app needs. And I think we pushed the ability to, or we had a dashboard that would show you when you're running your app in Kubernetes, you could very easily see the resource consumption. And that just allowed people to get at least a baseline, leave it open, see what it uses, and then adjust from there, see what you can do to optimize it. And at that point, they were thinking more in terms of number of cores they needed and how much memory they needed. And that made it a lot easier to help them migrate. It really comes down to driving developers to take advantage of what it offers. And if you can show them how much easier their lives are with running on Kubernetes, especially when it comes to downtime, being able to reschedule a pod almost instantaneously onto other hardware, and not to mention being able to use older hardware. You can very easily set labels on old hardware, and you can selectively run it on old hardware and keep that old hardware going forever. If you feel like you need to save money, you can have a mix and target certain apps to run on new stuff, other apps to run on older hardware, and really gain a benefit of being able to keep on using that older stuff.
So like a couple of questions, but in then what you're saying, and I think we hear it quite a lot in the podcast, it's a question of think about the developers in the end of the day, of what's in it for me, right? Like I'm a developer.
Yeah.
I don't really care about, like this Chef, Puppet, Ansible, like no one really cares, right? Maybe you do, maybe I do, but most of the people don't really care. They do care, you say, about the downtime or the ability to adjust the resources at time. And again, you are in a business where like performance are crucial for the application themselves. So you gave them like those kind of like, I will call it candies, right? And in order to get them frustrated into migrating, which I think in the end of the day, that's the really only way of like, like achieving that. I'm not sure if it's scale, but in a healthy manner, and not like forcing them and telling them like you need to do it by next week. Because
absolutely. That's the greatest way to sell something to somebody. If you can show them the benefit and how it's really a step forward, how it makes your life easier, you shouldn't really have to evangelize it. It should just sell itself. And it takes work define that target group of developers that are willing to be the first ones. You need to find those progressive developers that will be the first ones to get in there and try to support you because they can see how it could be beneficial. And we had a couple of key people at the company that were willing to take a chance and try it. And I think once you plant the seed, they're able to then go out to the rest of the teams on the development side and really, start evangelizing or at least getting people interested.
What, like, how much time did it took you? And are you currently running only on Kubernetes?
So we were able to pretty much move the entire Tremor DSP platform, the demand side platform, over to Kubernetes until we recently switched off of that. We bought a company called Moby, and they are not a heck of a lot was running on Kubernetes with the Moby. So we're in the process of doing the same thing we already did on the Tremor side for the Moby acquisition. So there are some apps running there now. There's quite a few. Well, Moby had a lot of other products, so we have some of their products running completely.
It's like they're an Israeli company, aren't they? Or they used to be
They were owned by Singtel, Singapore Telephone, and then they're an amalgamation of a couple other companies. So we are an Israeli company, though. Nexxen is an Israeli company. I think we're actually in the same building as you guys.
Oh, really?
Right. Yeah. So at some point maybe we'll see you when I come out there. But so it's great that when we bought them, we already had the know-how, and before we even bought them, we had the due diligence that needed to be done, and we could kind of see what the possibilities were, and that really led to the ability to give the green light to the acquisition, because we had to go through and understand what could be done, and to have that vision of where we could take that platform and make it even better than it already was. So it's a very powerful platform. It handles a ton of traffic. It gives a lot of flexibility to the end users, to clients, to be able to run their campaigns and visualize even more data as to what's going on in real time. And again, all this is like a constant waterfall of traffic that we have to be able to process. So basically, we went from our dabbling with Kubernetes the hard way, over to KubeSpray, running through Ansible, and that got really tired really quick, just due to the fact that it was kind of these static deployments. If something went wrong, you'd have to rerun it again. It would take an hour. And that's when Talos and Sidero, we met the guys over at Talos, or Sidero rather, Sidero Labs. And that really was a game changer. So we run Talos Linux, as well as when we run in the cloud, we're running through EKS. But right now, all of our Kubernetes deployments are with Talos.
Oh, that's nice. How many clusters do you guys have? Nodes clusters?
Into the tens of clusters at this point. It depends on, some clusters could be a couple hundred nodes. Really, it depends on the need. Typically, we were trying to size the clusters accordingly to hey, how many pods do you think you're going to be running? What type of apps are going to be running on these clusters? How do you want to organize all that? That's all really important. These are all things that you need to sort of hash out on paper before you can figure out your techniques and how you want to do it. Do you want to route traffic directly to the pods? Do you have to use ingresses? What type of load balancing do you want to do? Do you want to load balance external traffic in through using BGP with Metal LB, or how do you plan on routing traffic internally to the cluster? There's so many things you need to do, especially if you're running on bare metal. I mean, that takes, I think, a lot of know-how. You've got to understand network engineering. You've got to have understanding of DNS, storage, all kinds of things. And not to negate the fact that even in the cloud, you have to have a lot of knowledge. It's just a different type of knowledge. Yeah. Because a lot of things are sort of provided for you in the cloud that you don't get on-prem.
No, I'm with you. So, Vijay, we have like 1 more minute or something like that. So maybe if you can share what is the future has in store, both for your company and in general, what do you see as like the most interesting trends around Kubernetes?
Yeah, I think, we've been toying, the latest craze is AI, but I think being able to leverage that predictive AI analysis on, your cluster behaviors. I think Talos is a great example of the future of Linux. I consider that sort of the Tesla of Linux. The entire operating system, I think, fits in 70 megs, and there's 12 binaries that run. There's no read-write mounted root file system, and extremely secure, easy to deal with. It really takes every node you're running in your cluster and just creates an appliance out of it and makes it a lot easier to deal with. So you really get to that cattle versus pets scenario where you're able to just kind of run and forget about it. It also scales really, really quickly. So I think down the road, those smaller Kubernetes specific operating systems like Talos will really take over. I think that's where things are going in the Kubernetes world as far as bare metal. And in general, I think it's just much easier to run in Kubernetes regardless. You can take almost any app and run it there. Just getting through the learning curve and evangelizing it to your friends and peers is really, really important. It makes your lives a lot easier, and it's a lot of fun.
No, I'm with you, and I think Talos is like super interesting. It's really gaining a lot of momentum inside the industry, and I do wonder like if that's really the future. It's like you're the first one that said that, but I do see it as becoming more and more popular for Commodore customers as well.
Yeah, it's API-driven OSs, baby. They're it's pretty sophisticated, and it's a leap forward, in my opinion. I'm taking a chance with that, but the guys that run that company are very, very experienced. They're good people and very passionate, and they really, really know what they're doing. So it takes a lot of the chance of human error out of the equation as far as running Kubernetes, and it just runs. So far so good.
That's what we all want, right? Like it will just run.
Exactly.
I think that with that, I conclude today's episode. Do you have anything that you want maybe to talk about, like gigs, rock gigs, blog posts, whatever you want to share?
Oh man, no, I just want to say thanks for having me on, and I'm getting too old to go to those rock shows these days, or maybe I'm not. I just need to get out more. I got to say, one of my other hobbies is ham radio. So there are a lot of really cool things happening with ham radio these days, including AI analysis of audio. So you can actually filter out of the noise that you're hearing. You can filter radio signals out of that by submitting it to an AI platform this one guy built, and you're able to cut down on that. But just being in it gets you outside, gets you active, and it's kind of a fun thing. So yeah, I don't know, just figured I'd throw it out there. Ham radio.
No, that's like that is indeed unique. Okay, BJ, thanks very much, and happy to have you on the show.
Hey, Jill, thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Kubernetes for humans.